My husband canceled our Greece honeymoon to care for his ex-wife when I discovered he stayed a full week living with her. I filed for divorce 1 month after marriage, and they're together now. I'm 29 years old, I work as a marketing analyst, and I need to tell this story because what happened like 2 months ago still has me completely messed up. Like, I can't believe my marriage went to shit so fast and in such a pathetic way. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I met William like 3 years ago at a work conference, one of those boring ones where everyone pretends to be interested in the PowerPoint presentations, but really they're just there for the networking and free drinks. William seemed interesting from the start. You know, he was that type of guy who's always busy, always has an important project, always answering emails on his phone, even when you're trying to have a normal conversation with him. At the time, I thought it was attractive. Like, wow, this man is ambitious and successful. But looking back, I should have seen it as the giant red flag that it was. The thing is, we started seeing each other. We dated for almost 2 years. And he proposed at a fancy dinner where he probably answered like 3 work calls before getting down on one knee. But whatever. I was in love, or at least I thought I was. From the beginning, I knew William had been married before, to a woman named Angela, and that they'd gotten divorced like 4 years ago because according to him, things just didn't work out. They were very different, wanted different things from life. All that classic story people tell when they don't want to get into details. What seemed a little weird to me, but not necessarily bad at the time, was that they were still friends. Like, they'd text each other now and then, they'd meet for coffee every 2 or 3 months, and William always said it was important to maintain a civil relationship with your ex, that they were mature people and blah blah blah. I tried to be the cool girlfriend, the one who's not jealous or insecure, so I never made a big drama about it, even though honestly it made me a little uncomfortable. During our relationship, there were several moments where William canceled plans with me because of work. Like, we'd have dinner reservations and suddenly a crisis would come up with a client and he'd have to stay until 10 at night at the office. Or we'd planned a weekend away and it turned out he had a super important meeting early Monday morning, so better not travel that far. I was always understanding because, well, we all have demanding jobs. I've also had to stay late or cancel things because of an urgent campaign. So I tried not to be the typical girlfriend who complains all the time. But the truth is, it happened pretty often, and my friends, especially my sister Allison, would tell me, "Hey Zoe, are you sure you want to marry someone who's always going to put work first?" And I'd tell them no, that William was just in a very busy stage of his career, that things were going to calm down. We got married like a month ago. It was a nice wedding, though small, just close family and intimate friends, because neither of us wanted anything over the top. William's parents were there, my parents too, and everything was fine. Like, people cried during the vows and we danced and ate cake, and it was a happy day. Well, technically it was happy, except for the fact that William was checking his phone during the reception several times. But we all pretended not to notice, because it was our special day, and I didn't want to ruin it by being a bridezilla or whatever. We'd planned the honeymoon for 2 weeks after the wedding. We were going to go to Greece, you know, those islands with white little houses and blue sea that you see on Instagram and think, wow, I need to go there someday. I was super excited. I'd been researching restaurants and beaches and archaeological sites for weeks. I had everything planned in a digital folder with itineraries and reservations, and William seemed excited too. Or at least that's what he said when he looked up from his laptop long enough to comment something about the trip. The day before we left, William tells me very casually while we're packing that he has a meeting with an important client in the morning, like at 8, but not to worry because our flight doesn't leave until 2 in the afternoon, so he'll have plenty of time. I get a little annoyed because literally we're about to go on our honeymoon and he's still scheduling meetings. But he tells me this client represents like 30% of his company's revenue, so he can't say no. And I think, well, okay, it's just a quick morning meeting. It's not that big a deal. The morning of the trip, I wake up super early, like at 6, because I'm nervous and excited and can't sleep anymore. And William had already left for his meeting. I finish packing the last things, get ready, check that we have our passports and boarding passes downloaded, and call an Uber to go to the airport. I send William a message like, "Hey love, I'm already leaving for the airport, see you there." And he responds, "Okay, perfect, see you there." I arrive at the airport like at 11:30. We still have plenty of time. I go through security and go sit in the waiting area near our gate. I send another message to William asking where he is, and he says he already left the meeting and is on his way. Okay, perfect, all good. Half an hour passes and I write to him again. "Are you close?" And he tells me yes, that he's in traffic, but he's coming. It's 12:30 now, and I start to get a little anxious because boarding starts in half an hour. But well, there's still time. At 1:45, I receive a text message from William, and when I open it, I feel like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on me. The message says textually, and I swear I have it burned in my memory forever. I'm so sorry, Zoe, but I'm not going to be able to make the flight. Angela had an emergency and needs my help. I'll take the flight by yourself, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow, or the day after, when I sort this out. I love you. I sat there staring at the phone, unable to process what I'd just read. Angela? His ex-wife Angela? What kind of emergency? And he thinks I'm going to take the flight alone to our honeymoon, like it's nothing? I call William immediately, but he doesn't answer. I send him like 5 messages in a row. Like, what's happening? What kind of emergency? Why can't someone else solve it? This is our honeymoon. And finally, he responds saying that Angela twisted her ankle really bad and can't walk and doesn't have anyone else who can help her because her friends are out of town or working and he's the only person available. I was furious. Like my hands were shaking and I felt like I was going to explode right there in the middle of the airport. I write him, she doesn't have friends? She doesn't have family? She can't call an Uber to go to the hospital? And he tells me she already went to the hospital and they put an orthopedic boot on her, but she needs help at home because she lives alone and can't move well, and that he feels responsible for her because they were married for 5 years and she's still important to him. At that moment, they announced boarding for our flight, and I had to make a decision super fast. I decided not to take the flight to Greece. Instead, I bought a last-minute ticket, super expensive by the way, to go to the city where my sister Allison lives, like 3 hours by plane from where I was. I spent like $1,200 on that flight when I was supposed to already have a paid ticket to Greece, but I didn't care because there was no way I was going to go alone to my honeymoon, while my brand new husband was taking care of his ex-wife. Before boarding, I sent William a message saying exactly what I thought of his decision. Like I wrote him a super long paragraph about how this was completely unacceptable, how he'd ruined our honeymoon, how Angela clearly still had feelings for him and he was too stupid or too convenient to see it, and how I felt betrayed and humiliated. He responded something about me being dramatic and that he was going to catch up with me in 1 or 2 days max. I arrived at Allison's house crying and furious, and she hugged me and let me vent for like 2 hours while we drank wine. Well, I drank wine. She drank tea because she's 4 months pregnant, but that's another topic. Allison had always had doubts about William. From the beginning, she'd tell me that man is too married to his work and the thing with Angela is weird. And I'd always defend him saying no. She didn't understand that William was just dedicated to his career. Now, she didn't say, I told you so because she's a good sister. But she was definitely thinking it. I knew it. That night we went out to a club. Like Allison told me, look, I know technically you're married and on your honeymoon, but your husband abandoned you, so let's go out and have fun and forget about that idiot for a few hours. I put on a dress I'd packed for Greece, got all dressed, up, and we went dancing. And honestly, I had an amazing time. It had been months since I'd gone out like that, just to have fun without worrying about anything, dancing with my sister and her friends, drinking cocktails, really laughing. At some point during the night, I got the brilliant idea, or maybe not so brilliant in retrospect, to take some photos of me dancing and send them to William so he could see that I was also perfectly fine without him. The photos weren't anything scandalous, just me dancing with a cocktail in my hand, smiling with my friends, like clearly at a club but nothing inappropriate or anything. I was still wearing my wedding ring in the photos because I hadn't taken it off. I sent them to William with a message that said something like, since you're enjoying your time with Angela, I also decided to have a good time. I immediately regretted it a little because I knew that was going to cause drama, but I also thought, no. You know what? Let him get upset. Let him feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling. William saw the photos but didn't respond anything that night. The next day, I woke up with a ton of messages and missed calls, but not from William, but from his mom, from my father-in-law, basically the whole family. Turns out William shared the photos with everyone and told them his version of the story, where I was the insensitive and dramatic wife who went out partying while he was helping someone in a medical emergency. His mom sent me a super long message about how disappointed she was in me. How could I be so selfish? That Angela really needed help, and William was just being a good person. My mom also called me worried saying what's going on, that William had told them I'd gotten angry over something small and left just like that. I had to explain to everyone, literally every person who contacted me, the complete situation. I told them how William had canceled our honeymoon, which was already paid for and planned, at the last minute to go take care of his ex-wife for a twisted ankle, that it wasn't a life-threatening emergency, that Angela has family and friends perfectly capable of helping her, and that this was just the most recent example of William prioritizing absolutely everything and everyone above me. I told them about all the times he canceled plans with me for work, about how he was checking his phone during our wedding, about how I'd always been understanding and patient, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back. I also explained to them that William kept maintaining a very close relationship with Angela, that I'd always tried to be cool with that, but clearly there were limits, and apparently those limits didn't exist for him. I told them that Angela obviously still had feelings for William, because who calls their ex-husband when they twist an ankle instead of calling literally anyone else? And William was either completely oblivious to that or he liked the attention. I'm not sure. Which of the two options is worse? Some family members started to understand my point of view after those conversations, especially my mom, who called me back and told me I was right, that this wasn't normal, that William should have found another solution. But William's family kept defending him, saying I was exaggerating, that it was just a week and we could reschedule the honeymoon after. A week. As if that was the point. As if the problem was just that we weren't going to go to Greece. And what really upset me was that William completely stopped answering me after I sent those club photos. 2 days passed, 3 days, 4 days without any message from him. I'd write him like, okay, we need to talk about this. This can't stay like this. And nothing. He wouldn't even leave me on read. He simply didn't read the messages. My sister told me that was emotional manipulation, giving me the silent treatment to punish me for going dancing, but I still had hope that when he came back, we could talk, like adults, and resolve this. After a full week at Allison's house, I decided to go back home, like to the house William and I shared, which was technically more his because he'd bought it before meeting me, but I'd been living there since we got engaged. I took my flight back, arrived at the house like at 5 in the afternoon, and when I opened the door, I found a total disaster. There were dirty dishes in the sink, clothes thrown everywhere, the bed unmade. Basically, it looked like no one had cleaned anything all week. Which was weird because William is normally pretty neat with his things. William wasn't home. I sent him a message saying I'd come back and asking where he was, and it took him like 2 hours to respond. When he finally answered, he told me he'd arrive in a bit, that he was finishing up some things. He arrived like at 9 at night. He looked tired and disheveled, like he hadn't shaved in several days, and was wearing the same wrinkled shirt I'd seen him in the photos. He posted on his social media during the week. We sat in the living room and I told him, okay, we need to talk about what happened. And he sighed as if I was the one being unreasonable and told me, yes, that we needed to talk about how I'd reacted in a completely exaggerated way to a situation that required his help. I felt like my head was going to explode. Like I just sat there staring at him, unable to believe he really thought I was the problem in this situation. I told him, William, you left your wife stranded at the airport on the day of our honeymoon to go take care of your ex-wife. He told me he hadn't left her stranded, that he let me know with enough time so I could take the flight alone or cancel, and that Angela really needed help because she didn't have anyone else. I asked him directly, where were you this week? Because I know Angela doesn't live in this house, so obviously you weren't here. And he told me, very casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world, that he'd stayed at Angela's house all week to take care of her because she couldn't move well with the injured ankle. She needed help cooking and cleaning and doing basic house things. And that he slept on the living room couch to be available if she needed something during the night. I think that was the moment when something really broke inside me. Like I felt like a physical click in my chest. I told him, let me see if I understand correctly. You canceled our honeymoon. You left me alone at the airport. You ignored my calls and messages for a week. And you stayed living with your ex-wife, sleeping at her house every night. While I was at my sister's house crying and trying to explain to our families why we weren't in Greece. And he told me yes. Basically, that's what had happened. But that I was making it sound worse than it was because he was just helping someone who needed help. I asked him if Angela knew he'd canceled our honeymoon to stay with her. He stayed quiet for a moment and then admitted yes, she knew. And she felt really bad about it, but she really had no other option. I told him, Of course, she had other options. Literally any other option would have been better than this. He could have gotten her a nurse. He could have paid for a home help service. He could have organized for her friends or family to take turns helping her. But instead, he chose to cancel his honeymoon and temporarily move in with his ex-wife. I got up from the couch and started putting my things in a suitcase. William asked me what I was doing, and I told him I was leaving. That this was completely unacceptable and I needed time to think about what I was going to do with our marriage. He told me I was being ridiculous, that I was letting my insecurity ruin our relationship, that he'd never been unfaithful to me or anything like that, that he'd just helped a friend in need. I yelled at him. And this is the loudest I've yelled at anyone in my life. That she wasn't his friend. She was his ex-wife, and that any normal person could see the relationship between them wasn't appropriate for someone who's married to someone else. I finished packing my things, called an Uber, and went to my parents' house. I didn't go back to Allison's because she lives far away and I had to work the next day, so my parents made more sense. When I arrived and explained everything that had happened to them, especially the part where William had stayed all week at Angela's house, my dad got furious. Like, my dad is generally very calm and rational, but he was really angry, saying, how did that man think that was acceptable? That if I were his daughter, which, well, technically I am his daughter, but you know what I mean, he would never have allowed that behavior. The next morning, while I was at work trying to concentrate on my projects and failing miserably, I made the decision to contact a divorce lawyer. I know it sounds very drastic, like we'd been married literally a month, but honestly I didn't. See how we could recover from this. It wasn't just the canceled honeymoon, it was everything. It was the complete pattern of behavior where I was always going to be in second or third place after his work and Angela, and I didn't want to live the rest of my life like that. The lawyer told me that given we'd been married less than 2 months and didn't have kids or really shared properties, apart from some small things we'd bought together, the divorce should be relatively simple. I filed the papers that same week. When William received the divorce notification, he called me yelling, saying, how could I do this? That I hadn't even tried to work on our marriage, that I was throwing everything away over a misunderstanding. I told him it wasn't a misunderstanding, that he'd very clearly chosen his priorities, and I wasn't among them. The most frustrating thing was that William accepted the divorce without fighting, like he signed all the papers without even trying to go to couples therapy or anything to save the marriage. That confirmed to me that he probably was never as committed to the relationship as I thought. After we signed everything, he sent me an email. He didn't even have the balls to tell me in person or by phone, where he basically told me he'd always known I was too insecure and jealous to understand his friendship with Angela, and that he deserved to be with someone who trusted him completely. That email made me angrier than anything else that had happened, because he was completely twisting the narrative, making me look like the bad guy in the story when he was the one who ruined our honeymoon and our marriage. I showed it to my parents, to Allison, to my friends, and everyone agreed he was trying to gaslight me, blaming me for reacting reasonably to his completely inappropriate behavior. The divorce was finalized like 3 weeks ago. I moved permanently with Allison because I needed a complete change of scenery. And I was lucky because my company let me transfer to an office in her city. I'm sharing the apartment with her and her husband for now until I find my own place. And honestly, it's been good for me to be close to my sister during this ugly time. I haven't talked to William again since the divorce was finalized. I found out from a mutual friend that he and Angela are officially dating now, which doesn't surprise me at all, but it still hurts a little because it confirms I was right about everything. My parents are still furious with him, especially my dad, who apparently sent him a very strong message about how he treated his daughter, and William's family stopped contacting me completely after the divorce, which is fine. I don't need that energy in my life. Last week, I went for coffee with a college friend I hadn't seen in a long time, and when I told her the whole story she told me, it sounded like William had never really gotten over his relationship with Angela and probably married me in an attempt to move on, but without really being ready. Makes sense, I guess. What bothers me is that I lost a year planning a wedding. I lost time and money on a honeymoon that never happened, and now I'm divorced at 29 after a 1-month marriage. When people ask me why I got divorced, I have to explain this whole ridiculous story, and I always end up sounding bitter or dramatic, but the truth is, it was completely justified. I'm using my maiden name again. I changed it back on all my documents and at work, and I'm trying to rebuild my life. I'm not ready to date anyone new yet. Like, the idea of meeting someone and having to explain to them that I was married for a month embarrasses me. But my friends tell me any decent person is going to understand the situation when I explain it. I'm focusing on my work, on being close to my sister before the baby is born, and on basically figuring out who I am outside of that relationship that consumed the last 3 years of my life. Sometimes I wonder if I should have tried more, if I should have given more chances. But then I remember William admitting so casually that he stayed a whole week living with his ex-wife while I was devastated at my sister's house, and I know I made the right decision. No one deserves to be in a relationship where they're always going to be the second choice, and that's exactly what I was for William. My sister tells me that someday I'm going to meet someone who'll put me first without me having to ask for it, who'll prioritize me naturally, because that's what you do when you truly love someone. I hope she's right, but for now I'm okay being alone and working on myself. The craziest thing about all this is that 2 months ago I was a newlywed excited about planning her honeymoon in Greece, and now I'm a divorcee, living with her pregnant sister trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Life changes super fast, you know? I never thought my marriage would end before we could even celebrate 2 months of anniversary, but here we are. And honestly, even though it hurts and it's humiliating and complicated, I think I'm better off this way than staying in a marriage where my husband preferred to sleep on his ex-wife's couch than be with me on our honeymoon. That's enough for now, I guess.